So yeah, this has been a video a long time in the making. Obviously back to one of my favourite TV series, but perhaps one I've watched more than even Buffy. And it was kind of, it's long gone again, it's probably a bit niche, but this was definitely a TV programme of my generation. Watching it from school all the way through and that. It's come up with iconic characters, and I kind of guess it may have changed the world a little actually. A bit like Star Trek, it's had an effect on society, hasn't it? Obviously pumping our all of our conspiracy theories and stuff, and it just, yeah, it's one of them that made you think. And it also had loads of interesting, exciting monsters. So yeah, that's the X-Files. The latter seasons had some actually standalone, absolutely brilliant episodes when they came back, and I mean some of the best they've ever made. Kind of a postmodern kind of parody of some of the earlier stuff and that, and it works out really well. So I don't need a really long intro because I'll probably waffle on through it. So alright, let's get started. So they probably are in some sort of order of my favourites. They're all, obviously I love these characters, but these were the main characters. I'm going to start with kind of the one that's potentially in it the least, and that's Monica Reyes. Now she comes in as Mulder's left. Don't worry about the story. David Duchovny went off to do something else, and John Doggett, who we'll come to next, replaced him, and Scully kind of, she's still a main character, but she takes a step back from the FBI. Anyway, Monica Reyes is kind of, well, so yeah, she sort of joins the team accidentally, with Scully going on leave with a baby and that, and her being John Doggett's former partner actually. She just kind of ends up on the team, and her background is she was like a ritualistic killing and forensics expert, so she knows all about, a little bit about the occult and the more religious side of killing and patterns with that. So she's quite curious, and she's quite, not psychic, but she has this kind of very empathetic kind of ability to sense things. There's not really much about her because she's in it so little, and they don't really explore her background that much. But she was born in Mexico. It's about as interesting as it gets about her, and she does bring a different sort of side to each of the cases, because obviously John Doggett's the skeptic, she's the kind of more open-minded one, you know, trying to match the Scully and Mulder thing. And well, sadly with Reyes, they kind of ruin her in the last seasons, the last episodes, and I don't know why. They kind of team her up with the smoking man, who we'll get on to a bit later, but it doesn't really make any sense why she joins him in that, because it could only be really seen for selfish reasons. I mean, obviously he spins a yarn about staying alive and protecting humanity and all of that. She wouldn't buy into that. It's just a very unrealistic direction for the character to have gone, but it is what it is, isn't it? I'm not going to waffle on too much. What I've picked for her is Quetzali from Daniel Hossier, which, yeah, it's kind of obvious. It's a fragrance that's kind of influenced and created all around the idea of ancient Mexico. There's like avocado, there's incense, it's a smoky, woody, green one, lots of vetiver and things like that. And for many reasons it kind of suits. Obviously that green, in touch with nature, ancient kind of beauty and whatnot suits Reyes, but also the kind of the smokiness, if you like, is the darker side, and that, and then again it's from ancient Mexico, isn't it? So yeah, I mean, I find it a shame what they did with the character, but in all fairness, she wasn't really in it too much in season 9 and 10 to really do it, but she came back, I suppose, and you know, just came back as the wrong kind of character. Surely they could have brought her back in a different way. But anyway, that's Reyes and that's Quetzali from Daniel Hossie. Now the next one is John Doggett, who comes in to replace Mulder. Well, he doesn't actually. Oh, that's pretty, isn't it? I've never seen that before. Yeah, sorry. Oh, this comes all the way down, doesn't it? But yeah, he comes in he comes in to look for Mulder. Deputy Director Kirsch is the guy who I'll cover in the conclusion a bit, because he's interesting but not enough for a character. But anyway, he's brought in, and obviously Scully absolutely doesn't trust him at all. Why would she? But actually he is there to find Mulder. He doesn't really understand what's going on. He's quite a skeptic of it all, and he ends up being put on the X-Files, which obviously again doesn't particularly please Scully. But they kind of get closer and closer, and he becomes quite a likeable character actually. And they do go into his kind of backstory in that he's a Marine, but he kind of was into the FBI because his son was kidnapped and killed, which is obviously quite traumatic. And some of the stories kind of weave into that, and you do get a resolution with it. I won't give too many spoilers out. The resolution isn't great, but at least it's that piece he actually knows what happens and that. And he stays very loyal to Scully, and he's quite helpful to Mulder as well. Although again, obviously Mulder doesn't like him. And he's just he's quite a sad, solitary kind of character. Obviously him and Monica Reyes have a kind of previous relationship, very platonic, nothing how's your father and all that going on. There's no sexual tension there. And yeah, he doesn't come back in the last episodes. But I don't know, I really did warm to him over it, because you don't like him at first. Again, you're suspicious of him. And he's got this horrible accent, which is not like he's South African like that. But with you, he's kind of like from New York. I'll stop with the accents. He was born in Georgia, and then he went to New York. Yeah, no more, promise. So his accent's really irritating, because I don't even think the actor knows what the hell he's doing with it. Anyway, it's not a review on the accents and whatnot. And yeah, like I say, he's a good, very likeable character. What I've picked for him is Zaharoff's signature pour on, and there's a reason for that. It's a very classic fragrance, and it's got that kind of fougere DNA, but it's much more than that. It's got a nice oud and frankincense running through it, like a honeyed myrrh and stuff. So it's got this beautiful resinousness that's blended in with that kind of classic thing. I think that suits John. He's quite old school. His mind does slowly become open. He's never stops particularly being a skeptic, but he comes in and he goes along with it, and like I say, he does develop quite a caring relationship for the others, and I think this is one of them. It's kind of like a father relationship, and he very much is a father, big brother kind of character. And yeah, I just think that's a really good fragrance for him. So for John Doggett is a Zaharoff signature pour on. Next is kind of, he's not a bad guy, but he is a bad guy. He's a very, very complex character who goes round in circles with where you're at with him. Well, Smoking Man kind of puts him in there to kind of infiltrate Mulder and stuff, and this is Alex Krycek, by the way, and he does that, and he kind of, I don't think he ever gets the trust, but he's there to kind of spy and sabotage things. He tries to kill Mulder a few times, he kills a witness, he does go on the kind of sabotaging things. He then, obviously he's found out that he's not quite who he's supposed to be, So then he goes off and he works more directly for the smoking man, who then tries to have him killed, and he feels very betrayed. And yeah, very betrayed and obviously wounded by this, and he kind of is a bit lost. So then his mission is to kind of bring down to bring down the smoking man and kind of go against the big plan, which I'm not going to go too much into the story because, you know, it's the characters, isn't it? And he then injects Skinner, who we'll come up to later as well, with some sort of weird metallic thing, so he kind of has a lot of control over Skinner, or Skinner dies, that kind of thing. It's really quite interesting. So yeah, he's not a black and white bad guy. He does have these kind of, oh yeah, he's also infected with the alien virus, which is a bit unfortunate, isn't it? And then yeah, he's not black and white. He's very, very interesting, and there's a part of him that thinks he's doing the best. Obviously his main thing is revenge, but in some ways he does help Mulder out. He does help them both out, and he's very, he is, it's all about him, but that's not quite deliberate. Let's go back this way. He's just yeah, and what I picked for him is Nuit Bleu from Maison Violet. And I've picked that for him because it's almost it's a little Dioron like. It's a very beautiful iris kind of fresh one, but it's got a lot more citrus and it's somehow more rounded and more beautiful. That's a very classic French thing, but I think it's something, he's quite stylish, he's quite trendy and young. I think it's something that he would kind of have about him. It's also, it's quite a, it's not too cold, but it's quite a cold, calculated, it matches his calculatingness with that coldness. It has the warmth and the sparkle from the citrus, and he is quite a charming person. He just keeps getting screwed over by everyone and used by everyone, and that kind of does annoy him somewhat. In the end, he's involved with the super soldiers, and yeah, he's trying to kill, is it Mulder? And obviously poetic justice, Skinner shoots him through the head and kills him stone dead, even though he's begging to make another deal and stuff. But after torturing Skinner for so long, yeah, he kind of deserved it. So yeah, that's Alex Krycek, and that's Maison Violet's Nuit. Next is the aforementioned Skinner. Don't know why. Yeah, Skinner, who is, oh, he's one of my favourite characters. The reason he's not, this is where they all kind of merge into being pretty much the same in that kind of rankings, because they're all great. But Skinner is like the protective father, and he ultimately is always there looking out for Mulder and Scully, even though sometimes they don't realise it. He's obviously compromised a few times, but he's always basically there to look out for them. Obviously, like I said, he gets infected with that virus thing, which means he's being kind of controlled. In the end, the last series, it looks like he's agreed with the smoking man kind of thing, and he hasn't really, has he? It's all about Mulder and Scully. And there's a part where Kirsch actually says this, because they sent him to go looking for him because he's gone missing, but where he kind of they say, you know what, he could be much higher up, he could have been promoted so many times, but he spends all his time looking out for you two and protecting you guys, and that's why he's not gone for. So you kind of do get a real warmth for Skinner. Sometimes, like I say, you're not quite sure where he's at. Like, he's accused of murder, he's been set up, but you're never quite sure till you discover what's going on. And he's just, yeah, he's a caring person. And his background, he was obviously, he went to Vietnam and he suffered terribly, and that's what also makes him so open-minded, because he saw something there, like a protective avatar angel who always looked out for him when he was near death. and that opened his mind to not always being so sceptical to Mulder, but trying to get Mulder to let it drop a lot. And what I picked for Skinner is Top Shelf from One Way Bridge, and the reason for that is he's quite the daddy, but he's a very hunky, handsome, built, muscular kind of protector of them all. And there's one episode where there's somebody who comes in who wants to make a film about what they do, and they call him Skin Dog, and he's like in the bath, and in that kind of postmodern kind of twist looking at the film, he's kind of who Scully's really after, you know, and all that stuff. So if you know the fragrance, it's kind of, how would you describe it? It's if you want to use that word in inverted commas, it's obviously very masculine, and it's obviously like very rugged. It's like, you know, a man in a bar, big hairy chest and all of that, big protector, he's got to look after you and all of that. Obviously I'm talking about Skinner, who's a man, so it kind of applies to that. And it's just a rugged, handsome but put together, smooth, big, gorgeous man, which Skinner is. Yeah, I think I have a bit of a man crush on him. I think he's quite wonderful, isn't he, really? And he does do everything to look after Mulder and Scully, and ultimately it holds back his career and that, so that's why he's one of my favourite characters. I don't think there's anything interesting. Oh yeah, he was married, and obviously his job kind of came first, so that didn't work out, and she died. Yeah, he's a complex character, and you do find out more and more about him, with him not being in it every episode. He gets in it more and more, but you don't, you know, he's not one of the main characters. Anyway, for Walter Skinner, the assistant director, it is Top Shelf from One Way Bridge. So next up is the villain, probably one of the biggest villains there's ever been on TV, and that's the Smoky Man, Cancer Man, CGB Spender, Carl Gerhard Berg is his real name, Spender. You don't find that out till the last actual series, and he's the kind of greatest villain of all time, I think, on TV, and you can't really deny that. He's we'll sit down, because I can't bother to keep right, we'll go this way. But yeah, he's kind of he starts off, he's part of this thing called the Syndicate, who are some of these agents who found for the first time about Roswell and stuff. He was handpicked because his dad was a traitor ultimately, and he was kind of, but he could see why things maybe need to be done and stuff, so he's handpicked. And he had a hand in the murder of JFK, the murder of what's his face, Martin Luther King, sorry about that. And he pained him to do these things, but he understood it was for the greater good and that, and he respected them as great men. And he kind of has a kind of good life and that, and he does start writing these kind of anonymous memoirs. That doesn't go so well, and he turns really bitter again. But he also, big backstory, he's also, obviously he's Jeffrey Spender's father, who he has a relationship with her mother. He also has an affair with Mulder's mother, and is actually Mulder's dad as well, as it happens. But he's ultimately like, he thinks he's doing the right thing, and he thinks he's doing it for the good of humanity, and in the end for the good of him. The kind of the arc story, the main story, is gets a bit muddled up sometimes. But anyway, he seems impossible to kill. He gets shot, he isn't dead. He then gets pushed down some stairs. He isn't dead. He smokes through his throat. Then gets blown up in a cave. He isn't dead. He just has his face reconstructed. It's great when you see him pull his face out. He tricks Scully into getting the cure for his cancer. He's just an all-around about bad guy. And also he I believe is actually the father of William, who's Scully's kid. Through some, don't worry, he doesn't get it on with her, but he grows quite fond of her. In a way, he kind of loves Mulder, but doesn't he? He's kind of proud. He hates Jeffrey because he was a bit of a wimp and what have you. And it's all, yeah, it's very, he's very, very complex. Basically wants to wipe out all humanity and start again with himself. He stabs the aliens in the back. He stabs the syndicate in the back. He's kind of a complex character, let's call him, who just wants to, in the end, wipe out humanity and take over himself. And although he claims he never has a kind of fear of death, he does. And he manipulates everyone from Krychek he uses to Skinner. He even manipulates us and used him for a bit by threatening Scully and stuff. He's very, very, very clever, and he's got a great survival instinct. And you'd have to watch it to get just everything about him, because I could make an entire video just about him, really. He is a deeply fascinating guy. And for him, I suppose I've gone for a really predictable, obvious one, and that is Acro's smoke. Now, this is one of the most photorealistic fragrances you are ever going to smell of a cigarette. It opens with that kind of burn at the back of your throat, and then it just smells like a burning cigarette and the ash in the ashtray. It's a truly unbelievably brilliant cigarette fragrance, and I'd highly recommend you try it if you're a smoker, or if you're not. It's quite some experience, but there could be no other fragrance for him, because obviously that's what he's kind of famous for, and it's how sometimes you find out he's in control of people, because he's leaving cigarettes here and there. Everyone gets a bit annoyed with his smoking, and they don't change him to having a vape in the later episodes, which is, you know, sticking to his smoking ways. It's really very well done, actually. And do you hate him? No. And you're always glad that he hasn't actually died, and he manages to always come back. So yeah, that's CGB, Spencer, Smoky Man, Cancer Man, and Acros. So now we're down to the last two, and it's obvious who these are. So we'll start with Mulder, Fox Mulder. Now, obviously it's his X-Files, if you like, but I still wouldn't call him the main kind of character with it all. Fox's story, let's start at the beginning with him. He's the son of his dad, obviously. I can't remember his dad's name. And his dad and CGB, Smoky Man, are friends. They're both part of the same kind of grouping of people. Now this is where it gets kind of more complicated. Obviously we know later on his dad isn't his dad. His dad is, of course, Smoky Man from the result of an affair with his mum and what have you, but obviously he still adores his dad. His dad probably knew, but still treated him as he was his own. And the reason the reason he became interested in the X-Files was because his sister was taken when they were young. Now, his sister, some of the stories in this are confused, and it's best not to overthink about it, but his sister was taken by aliens, and because the group of people, the syndicate if you like, had to come to an agreement with the aliens to give one of their children, and but his dad tried to back out of it. Anyway, it was still taken. She was tested on a lot, she was brought back. She did live with Jeffrey a little bit in her youth and such like. She was taken back. Anyway, she died, and you do get a resolution to that eventually, which is probably for the best, given how all over the shop and confusing it was. and the various different sisters he had with different stories, and yeah, it got resolved in a way that made some sort of sense anyway. He saw Mulder get some peace. Obviously that's what kind of pushed him on to discover all this, to research all this. And anyway, Mulder's quite he's quite an open-minded fella. Scully's down there to level him out with some sort of science to kind of keep his insane views a bit more realistic than that. And he also manages to wake Scully up to certain possibilities and certain things. And oddly, they always, with Scully, she was very open-minded with them all, religious kind of stories, whereas he was very closed-minded with it, which I suppose was to provide a bit of the old balance and whatnot, wasn't it? Anyway, Mulder, it's his quest to find out the truth, if you like, and there's a few kind of nods to that, especially in the closing seasons. Because what would the truth be? What difference would it make? Is there a truth? You know, that kind of whole thing. And even he goes through crises of where he thinks he's found something out, and then it's the double bluff thing. Is this conspiracy real, or is this a conspiracy covering a conspiracy in a conspiracy wrapped up all in a conspiracy? And it does go through the kind of madness that I suppose conspiracists must go through, and somewhere in amongst there, one of them is true. Yeah, and he has various people who I'll mention in the honourable mentions who kind of help him through, but they don't really help him. They kind of, obviously they're very self-interested in all of that jazz. So he's a really interesting character, and obviously played by David Duchovny. He's got his charm, he's got his sense of humour, he's quite funny, he's very warm. You can see how Scully would eventually succumb to his charms, or vice versa, however you look at it. And yeah, he takes being a dad as such quite seriously later on. He disappears for a whole season, which, you know, the season doesn't suffer too bad when you consider he does, where he pops in and out of it, where he's taken by the aliens. So yeah, that's Mulder. And I suppose the show started with Mulder, but and he, don't get me wrong, I love him. Probably will be my second favourite character as such in it, and he is great, but yeah, he didn't make top of the list. So no further ado, what fragrance did I pick for Mulder? I know you all know it's coming, but it is Dupont. He's of that generation. He has that kind of cheeky charm about him. Out of there. Hey, don't drink that water. Hey, Charlie. It's bad water. Yeah, he has that cheeky charm about him. And he's also very noticeable. He's not quiet or shy. He's quite, he's quite sweet and thoughtful. Also, if you look at it from a whole point of view, the show is of that generation, isn't it? When Jupe was becoming kind of popular, and that did start quite early-ish in the 90s. So yeah, I mean, I don't need to waffle on. I think it's quite one that's quite obvious for Mulder, isn't it, really? Who also kind of carries a class of sophistication as he ages through it, and even in the kind of newer season, he's still got that boyish charm about him, and still that kind of outgoing funness about him. So for Mulder, now, obviously, finally, we're left with Scully, Dana Catherine Scully, as I remember. And she's right. We'll start at the beginning with her. Dana is the son of the daughter of her mother and father, obviously, who are quite a religious family. She's got a sister who sadly gets killed mistakenly, thinking it's her. And she grows up happy and brought up well, and and well educated and everything. I think her dad was in the army, the navy, in fact. So she grew up in a kind of great family. Anyway, she's sent down to the X-Files to debunk it, I suppose is the word they use, to provide the science and to kind of spy on and keep Mulder on his reins. Anyway, obviously, that doesn't really, well, it does. She does always provide that balance, but she kind of, they both meet in the middle, if you like. That's ultimately the point of them. They both balance each other out really well. She always stays a bit of a skeptic up until the very last seasons. With Doggett and Reyes, she tends to be more open-minded because she can't explain it in any other way. In one of the episodes, the Brady Bunch one, she kind of even finds a chap who could explain, you know, how all these paranormal things happen, because he has an incredible gift to use part of his brain to create whole worlds and things like that. But anyway, he dies, so she can't do that. She also, she herself is taken and experimented upon and given cancer, having cancer cured, etc., like as a test subject. And she goes through quite a difficult time. Both her parents die. Yeah, they do, and obviously her sister. And her brother stays estranged. Although her brother's, he's alright, he's just quite an awkward person. So yeah, that's kind of Scully. And she, when Mulder goes, she kind of stays on the X-Files a bit, but she kind of leads it still. And as an actor, Gillian Anderson holds the show perfectly. And in the later episodes, she's still great, but she's, you know, she's feeling a little maternal. She's looking for William, who's her son, who's changed his name to something else. We'll go through all that. But one of her very last lines in the whole goddamn show is that she wants to just pack it all in and have a family, which is the least Scully thing that anyone could ever say. It just, does it ruin Scully as a character? No, but you can see why Gillian Anderson would never go back to it. It was just gibberish. But she also has relationships with lots of the secondary characters in there. She's always obviously looking out and protecting Mulder. To be honest, she probably saves him from more situations than he does. And they start to grow closer and closer together as she starts to get jealous of other things, like Mulder's ex-partner, who he's also in a relationship with, comes in, and she's quite jealous and suspicious of her. She's also plays quite a paternal role to some of the people in there. So yeah, that's Scully. I don't need to keep waffling on and on and on. Very interesting character, many layers, etc. And what have I picked for her is La Petite Robe Noire, Black Perfecto, from Guerlain. And the reason that is, it's quite obvious, isn't it? It's an elegant, classy fragrance. It's got the dark leather, the cherry, you know, Gillian Anderson back in my day and even now. It's a very attractive lady, a very, like quite a sex symbol, etc. And it suits Gillian Anderson and Scully, Dana Scully, quite well. She was certainly a woman who knew what she wanted. She was a very sharp dresser. She exuded that intelligence, that confidence, that leadership, that assertiveness. She was the boss, but at the same time there was never any doubt throughout it that Scully was an attractive woman also. So it kind of puts that all together, that kind of appealingness, that kind of assertion and darkness, which she does have a darkness. She does kill someone, which is out of character and badly written, but she does kill someone who is evil, but perhaps she shouldn't kill him. Obviously, he should be arrested, etc. But yeah, that's his Dana Scully and Guerlain's Le Petite Robe Noire. Now I'm going to try and attempt to be as brief as I humanly possibly can with this next bit. Is the others, the kind of the people who didn't quite make the cut, who I think still are important enough to put in it all in one section, they won't be centred. But first up, obviously, we'll start with the lone gunmen. Yeah, the lone gunmen are Langley, Frohicke and Byers, who, again, how they meet and how that all starts, it gets a little bit confusing, and how they meet Mulder. Anyway, it's not important. So what I'd say is they are like three geeks. They write a magazine article. They do have a spin-off show, which I don't think I've ever watched. But they're basically these geeks who are into computers, who kind of eke out the conspiracies, find information from Mulder and whoever, and Doggett as well, and Scully and Skinner and all of that. So they're quite important, integral characters at some point. I'm not going to go into loads of detail. They do meet a sad end where they die as heroes, and they sacrifice themselves and get poisoned to kind of save the world, and they get buried in Arlington, which I believe is some special military graveyard in America. I don't know much about stuff like that. But and Frohicke does make an appearance in the last season, where he's trapped in like a virtual world, where it's not really obviously him, it's his consciousness was sent there beforehand, and blah blah blah, and obviously they're named after the lone gunman with the JFK assassination. So that's the lone gunman. Next is Deep Throat, who was part of the syndicate, and was friends with Mulder's father, and sort of helps him on early on, jabbing him here and there, mainly because he feels a lot of guilt over what he's done and what they've all become, and that. Sometimes he's helpful, sometimes he's not so much, but he does try to keep Mulder alive and give him little nuggets of information to keep him interested. And ultimately, in the end, he must know he sacrifices his life to save Mulder's by getting these group of people, aliens as it happens, what they want. And that's Deep Throat really. Meets a sad ending, and you don't really find out much about him. I think you do find out his name on a gravestone, but I can't remember if Mulder actually says it. So yeah, Deep Throat, and obviously Deep Throat's got some relation, the name, hasn't it, to was it Richard Nixon's something or other? But yeah, that's Deep Throat. Next is Deep Throat's kind of follow-up is Mr. X, who isn't as nice as Deep Throat, let's say. He's a little more self-interested, and what he's doing is for himself, and you never really know whose side he's on. Although I suppose before he dies, he does help Mulder make his next connection, who will be the next one, and he tries to help, but he ultimately wants to stay alive and benefit himself. He is an interesting character because it's that side of him being a little less obscure about who he's in it for is ultimately himself, and he's a lot less willing to help Mulder unless it really helps him, sort of thing. Whether he's a good man or not, I really don't know, and that's what I like about characters like that. You don't know either side. So yeah, that's Mr. X. The next one will be Deputy Director Kirsch, who's kind of put in there by the men to kind of rein even Skinner in, and Mulder and Scully. Now he's a complex character. He ultimately is there because he's doing what he thinks is right for the FBI, and there is a stage later on where he really does realise that it's not you know, it is going a bit far, and the FBI aren't, people at the top aren't what they seem they are, and he actually helps Mulder escape when he was due to be killed. And in the later episodes, he's still harsh and he's still what have you, but he also has a bit of a kind of feeling when he's directing Mulder to go look for Skinner. He does sort of care about them in a funny kind of way. And yeah, he's another one where his motives, he seems really harsh, and he's actually uses John Doggett quite a lot, but Doggett kind of investigates him to see how far he's involved. And I suppose the ultimate thing with that is he knows he's untouchable, Kirsch, but he's not wholly corrupt. Again, he's doing it because he thinks it's the better thing. So yeah, that's Deputy Director Alvin Kirsch. And next is Marita Karubius. She's for the Secretary General of the UN, and that's who Mr. X puts Mulder onto. Again, whether she's good or bad is interesting, but ultimately she does, like Krycek, actually develop a keen hatred of the smoking man, where she's kind of been trapped, and she was tested on that when she was no longer of use. But she did play both sides, and obviously working for the UN she found out all sorts of things. She seems like a nice person generally, and she does kind of realise the error of her ways, etc. But again, she's just trying to stay alive, I suppose, a kind of professional curiosity. So that's Maria Karubius. Oh God, I won't ever remember that name properly. But yeah, another great character. And then we'll almost end it there. Then there's Diana Fowley, who's Mulder's ex-partner, who's Mimi Rogers, who is she good, is she bad, does she work? She does work for the cigarette smoking man, but then of course she cares about Mulder. She gives Scully loads of like leaked information to make sure she saves Mulder. Them two don't get on. She kind of wants to give Gibson praise to who's a kind of hybrid to the smoking man, which she kind of does do in the end, but then she ultimately sacrifices herself and she dies to save Mulder. So that's Diana Fowley. And finally, because I can't go through every single character, another important one is of course Jeffrey Spender, who when he comes in doesn't realise that he's Mulder's brother. He doesn't realise he's the son of cigarette smoking man either. He's more concerned about his mother, who he thinks Mulder's put loads of ideas in his head, but his mum basically gets taken by aliens and tested on a lot, and he refuses to accept that that's what's happening, you know. It's just ridiculous and preposterous, which of course it would be. And then he ends up working for cigarette smoking man, who then shoots him in the face for being a coward and a shame of a son and all of this jazz. So yeah, that's Jeffrey Spender. He does come back later on, and he tries to help Mulder and Scully by injecting Scully's baby with something that'll suppress his powers. And then is he in the last series? I can't remember, but he does try to undo and realise what he's been doing is wrong and stuff. And he, again, like Krycek, kind of used a bit too much as a... I am absolutely not going to ramble on loads and loads in the kind of end of this, but if you haven't watched it, I'd recommend you watch it if you like sci-fi, or kind of it's the birth child of many of these kind of modern things, and they kind of look at the conspiracies and occult, as well as there's some really good kind of criminal FBI kind of sides of it. There's some interesting, like really interesting stories, and you learn all about what Scully does, you know, cutting up the bodies, forensics, that's the one, as well as the way the whole thing works and that, and it has that interesting element, the monsters of the week kind of thing, where it's specifically about one monster, like Jeffrey Toombs, they're quite harrowing, and it's just a really good thing, and it nods back to them times. And obviously the last few episodes kind of show how it's all redundant, because again they make jokes about everyone has a mobile phone, so there's kind of no secrets than that anymore. But if these things existed, etc., we'd be able to catch them, wouldn't we? You know, all of that it's really very good. So yeah, what more do I need to say? Thanks for watching. Were you an X-Files fan? Who was your favourite character? Do you still watch it now? Thanks for... Bye.